It is Wednesday, March 11th, 2026. And with me, as always, is my friend Pete. Pete, how you doing?
Glenn, I'm doing okay. Enjoying the nice weather we got rolling here. What was it, 70 degrees yesterday?
Incredible.
I
Incredible.
got out for a pretty nice long walk with me and Moose and my son Mike and his fiancee Haley, so that was pretty nice. And looks like a sunny day today. I've been kind of tired today, so I took a good long nap earlier. And, hanging in there.
Hanging in there.
Excited about what we got rolling today.
We have a very special guest who's going to be joining us today. They'll be calling in shortly. And we'll get to that. But before we do, I have somebody that keeps me honest about the podcast and makes sure we don't leave untied loose ends. And one of those loose ends was your terrific assistant Widley's gender announced. What was the outcome?
Oh yeah, she had the big gender reveal party a few weeks ago. It's a girl. And we also have a name, Aaliyah.
Aaliyah, beautiful.
Name. And she's pretty pregnant now. When you stand up, she is legitimately pregnant. There's a little baby in there throwing punches and kicking and making herself generally known.
Love it.
So everybody's excited for Widley and what's coming. It's her first child, so it's a big situation.
What's the due date for Aaliyah?
The due date is in late May.
Late May.
Oh, June, early June, first week of June.
Yeah. Terrific.
I had to look over. I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
So that's exciting.
Beautiful. That's excellent.
Good reminder that we forgot to follow up on that.
Yeah. Thank you to my brother Mitch, for that. But momentarily we'll be joined by a different Mitch, our second Mitch on the podcast, Mitch Albom. And
he's I think that I read somewhere that Tuesdays with Morrie is the #1 selling memoir in history.
In history?
I think I read that on ChatGPT.
That's incredible.
Which, if it's not true, it's pretty darn close to true. It's, it's an amazing book.
What an accomplishment. And what a beautiful book. Yeah.
It's a beautiful book. And it's actually, when you're reading it from my perspective, there's a few moments that, I got to take a breath kind of thing. It's a lot of things that Morrie talked about and Mitch wrote about that are far more eloquently expressed in his book than when I say them. But nonetheless, there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
Which is good and kind of hard at times.
Yeah.
To think about how much time has passed, since the book was written, and really how little has been accomplished. Not that people aren't working 24 hours a day on it, but how little the ball has been moved downfield.
Yeah.
In terms of really any type of treatment, even just to slow the disease, never mind, stop it or cure it or anything like that. So really interested to hear about what Mitch has to say.
Yeah. That'll be great. And
I guess a big shout out. I kind of got the story a little bit wrong last week. My cousin Alice has a close friend who hosts a lot of book parties, and she put Alice in touch with Mitch's agent and got in touch with him out of the blue, no interest, like a total cold call. And
put yourself out there.
Alice, when she sets her mind to getting something done, let's put it this way, don't bet against her. And after many calls and emails. Not that many, but you know, she didn't just write an email and it was set up. You know what I mean? It took some doggedness.
Yeah.
And so, big thank you to Alice for for making this happen.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Alice.
Hello.
Hey there.
How you doing?
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello. Peter, Glenn, how you doing?
How are you? It's a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on your show.
Well, we are grateful to have you and really appreciate it.
Sure. Happy to do it. Happy to do it.
Terrific. Yeah. Thank you so much. We'll give you a little bit of our backstory, and then we'll go into maybe some questions we have for you, and certainly interested in any questions you may have for us as well.
Okay.
But Pete was diagnosed with ALS sort of just a little bit more than 2 years ago, and we were friends. Really, our relationship was we played in a band together. We played music together, and Pete obviously had one of many difficult things he had to do was to share this news with his family, with his friends. And an idea that I had sort of in researching and thinking about the disease was, it would be neat to maybe do some interviews and kind of archive, his voice and a bit of him in a way that, his future grandkids might be able to enjoy. And it has sort of spiraled into a different thing. It wasn't a podcast idea originally, but kind of that opportunity when we're thinking about how to get this to friends and family, kind of that became the mode of operation. And so we've been, this is episode 29. We're 29 weeks in a row that we've been doing this, which is, and certainly owe a lot of inspiration to Tuesdays with Morrie, which both Pete and I had read, sort of back in the day. Our working title was Wednesdays with Pete initially, but we came upon a better title than that. So,
didn't want to steal your great idea.
Go ahead, take it. It's fine.
Glenn came up with a clever one for Pete's sake, which
I like that.
Was pretty good.
Yeah, that one definitely the muse struck me and delivered the perfect thing. But Mitch, yeah, so we're so excited to have you joining. I know millions of people know you for your books, but you started your career as a sports journalist, right? And Pete here is actually a former college basketball star at Wesleyan, even had a few dunks back in the late 80s. So I have to ask, did you ever scout the NESCAC back in the day, or did the dinger fly completely under your radar?
Well, I did know Wesleyan because isn't Wesleyan in Massachusetts?
It's in Connecticut, but
okay.
Yeah.
And I went to Brandeis, and so I think we might have been on the circuit there. So it's possible that I was aware of it, but back when I was in college, I just wanted to be a musician. I had no interest in sports writing. So I can't say I scouted you, Pete. I missed your dunk. I apologize.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story, though. I was a class of 89, so I think you're maybe a few years older than me.
I was class of 79. Yeah.
Okay. So Bob Branham, a guy named Bob Branham, was a hoops coach
Bob.
at Brandeis. Yeah. And I did a PG year at Andover, and Bob Branham recruited me hard. Like, he really wanted me to come to Brandeis, and I almost came.
You would have been the only person dunking there, I can tell you that.
Well, Brandeis is in a pretty cool league now, the UAA, with the University of Chicago and Emory and NYU and WashU. It's a pretty cool league. Anyway, so awesome. That in common.
Awesome. So one of the things I was thinking we could talk about, Morrie Schwartz famously held a living funeral, so he could hear the nice things people said about him while he was still alive. And but I guess the question for you, Mitch, is Morrie was kind of a pioneer of the living funeral, and Pete, you've done kind of similar things, turning family gatherings and concerts and holiday lunches into these celebrations of friendship. And so, Mitch, did you see a change in Morrie's spirit once he stopped sort of, I don't know if it was hiding the disease, but really starting hosting, the goodbye?
Well, I came along. He had already kind of made that turn. So it was, I can only answer that in terms of what he told me about when he first got diagnosed and how he reacted then. And, I now have seen this so many times, so many people, when they first get diagnosed, it's like you go through all 5 stages of grief of death in about 24 hours,
Yeah.
Except the acceptance part. That one takes a little longer at the end. And so, he was in shock. And, he said that he had to make a decision. And he realized that decision came early on. And that decision was, do I feel sorry for myself and say, woe is me, why'd I get stuck with this lousy disease? And do I just basically go out that way? Or do I try to spin something positive about this, negative disease that I've had? And he's always been a more positive person than negative. And so he erred on that side, and he decided, okay, I'm going to teach. For him, that the hardest thing was that he had to give up teaching. But in a way, he did his greatest teaching.
Right.
So the very thing that was the price that the taskmaster demanded was the very thing that he got back twice as much. And I've seen that happen many times over in different areas. There's a guy named Augie Nieto. You may be familiar with Augie's Quest, and if you're not, you should, because they do fantastic work with ALS and make all kinds of strides. They brought a drug to market, and Augie was the founder of Life Fitness, which, if you've ever been to a gym, you've seen Life Fitness bikes,
equipment.
Yeah, all that equipment, right? So he started that, became a billionaire, and got ALS at 47 or 48. Prime of his life, big handsome guy, beautiful wife, California beach house, the whole 9 yards. And he was kind of arrogant, as a successful businessman, rising up, and he found out he had ALS when he was on a trip in Vietnam with water skiing in the Mekong Delta. Talk about rich boy stuff.
Yeah.
And he kept falling off, and he couldn't understand why that happened. And he came back, got diagnosed. Now, his reaction when he first got diagnosed was he tried to kill himself. And he only remembered it was with the pills. And he remembered kind of being, when they were trying to save his life in the hospital room, and hearing his daughter say, Dad, come back to us, don't, please don't. And when he came out of that, as I say, the 5 stages of, denial and anger, and when he was definitely in the second or third of those. And he decided he would take his business acumen and, instead of using it to become a billionaire, create a corporation that had one goal as its purpose, and that was to find a cure for ALS. And he created this entire organization called Augie's Quest, multi-million-dollar organization now, and they have people working full-time, and all they do is come in and try to find a cure for ALS. And he managed that even as he lost the ability to speak, and he did it with his eye blinking and all the rest of that stuff, and said that it was the best stretch of his life that he'd ever had. He lived 18 and a half years.
Oh, wow. Good for him.
So there's all kinds of levels of this. But those 17 of those 18 years, he ran a different business.
Pretty productive, yeah.
Yeah. So I've seen this happen multiple times. And it seems that, I guess, because ALS, as Morrie called it, horrible, wonderful disease. Horrible, don't need to, speaks for itself. Wonderful because you get all this time to sort of reorganize and think. You're not getting hit by a truck. You're not having a heart attack. You're not losing all your faculties all at once. You have time to do things like living funerals and the like, or create a corporation, or start teaching a class in what's important in life and death instead of teaching a sociology class. And so, I witnessed the turnaround for sure. And I witnessed the delight that he took in his new phase. And, you know, I think, I don't know, I never really asked him this question, but I think if I could have asked him on the last day of his life, okay, you know, this is the last day. If we gave you the option to undo, go back, you don't have the disease, but you also don't have everything that's happened over the last 2.5 years. Yes or no? You know, you're already 78. It's not like you're 34, you know, and getting ripped off. Not that 78 is old, because I'm getting awful close to it. I think he would have said, "No, I'll take it." You know, This has been such an amazing last 2.5 years. You know, that says something. And I think Augie would have said the same thing, you know.
Mitch, I can't read books anymore. I mean, I can't flip the pages, so I'm an audiobook guy. But I recently listened to your book twice. And as you're telling the story, I'm wondering if some of those, I mean, there's a lot of commonality in the question you wanted to pose to him. It was a clever book.
Thank you.
And I really enjoyed it. But
I made the same connection. Like,
clever is what we're after around here. Clever.
Well,
clever.
I thought about it as clever, sound like a compliment or patronize. I know, literally, it was an intriguing, you know, concept as a. Well, there's a story arc.
I think, Pete, honestly, every book I've written since Tuesdays with Morrie is kind of a sequel to Tuesdays with Morrie. You know, I don't write any books that are just for the fun of it. I always write with some kind of sense of purpose. And this one was about regret. And, you know, I always pick a theme, and then I create a story around a theme, not the other way around. You know, I don't think I got a plot or I got a character or whatever I want to. So the theme was regret, and the theme was, you know, people saying I should have done this, should have done that, and, you know, wish I could go back and do it. And as you get older, you hear that more and more, you know, as the concrete sort of settles on your life. Because, you know, when you're 22, you don't hear that, because it's like, oh, I don't like my job, you quit, you do another one. I don't like my girlfriend, you break up, you try another one. But, you know, as the concrete hardens, we find it harder to get out of, or so we think. So I wanted to do a book about, you know, well, what if someone had that power to undo everything and just do it a second time, but you had to live with the consequences of the second time? Would the second time always be better than the first? And it's a lot of, you know, I always remember, I've listened to Morrie so many times, because not only for the book and all the talks I've done about it, but I do a podcast where we play tapes of, conversations from our conversations. So I hear his voice, you know, pretty much every week. And when it comes to regret, I remember him saying, I said, well, you know, what about regret? What about people, you know, who say I should have done this, I should have done that? And he said, that only reflects unfulfilled lives, you know, people who lived their lives for the wrong reasons while they were here. Otherwise, you don't have regret. You may have a desire to keep going, you know, like I wish I could go longer, but it's not regret. And the nice thing that ALS gave him and gives, you know, a lot of its participants, shall we say, I don't want to call them victims, participants, is they get that stretch to say, well, let me act out on the things that I think I'm regretting, so that I do them, and now they're not regrets anymore. They're things I wish I could do longer. Well, we're all gonna die wishing we could do things longer, unless we had a miserable life. And he had lived his life mostly the way he wanted to, so he wasn't filled with a lot of regrets. He did, you know, say things about forgiveness and things like that he should have even better. But he said the things that he used to regret: I should have written more books, I should have gone further in my academic career, he said, were meaningless to him at that once he had his diagnosis. And so you sort of see, well, if they're meaningless when things get really real, then they probably were meaningless before.
All along. Yeah.
Glenn, I've just got one thing, and I'll let you ask a few questions.
No, it's all good.
I've subsequently listened to Tuesdays with Morrie a few times in the last couple of years, and the one section that's gets me regularly. And in fact, it just happened today because in your second Tuesday, you ask him if he feels sorry for himself. And he says sometimes in the mornings, I sort of do an inventory of, what is working or really what is not working or what's working less well, and have a good cry.
Yeah.
I had one of those today, actually.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Well, the point that he was making with that, Pete, was that there's a time for everything. And to deny yourself a little sadness, self-pity, and not the negative self-pity, would be unnatural, And so he said, I give myself 45 minutes in the morning to howl at the moon, why me? This sucks. This is not right. I think he chose the mornings, if I remember correctly, because in his dreams he walked and he was fine and his body was normal, and so it kind of always would hit him when he woke up. Oh no, I'm still here, and so that's when he was sort of angriest or whatever. And but he said you have to detach, to say, okay, let it out, let it all out, scream, howl, don't hold back, let it out, but then step out of it and say that was self-pity. That was sadness. That's what it feels like. Same way that I always liken it to when I try to explain detachment to people, I say, imagine the first man on earth to get a cold. Didn't know what it was, so he gets a cold and he thinks, this is it, oh my God, I'm going to be sneezing the rest of my life, or I'm going to have mucus coming out of me the rest of my life. My throat's going to be sore the rest of my life. And then the cold passes and he gets healthy again. Now, the next time the cold comes, he says, oh, this is a cold. Well, it's the same thing about emotions. It's if you can recognize them within you and say, I feel so bad. I want to cry. But you say, okay, I know what this is. This is sadness. This is self-pity. Yeah. I have it. I'm not gonna deny it. Just like you can't deny a cold. You can say, I'm not getting this cold. You get it. It's too bad. But you also know that it can pass. You don't wallow in it. And so you place that emotion over here and you say, okay, I gave it 45 minutes. But there are other emotions. There's other things besides being sick, having a cold. There's health and there's other things. So now I'm going to do those. And that was the detachment that he talked about, that give yourself that moment, but see it for what it is. See it for give it a name, that's me crying. That's, Pete's tears, but then that's it.
The other thing is I'm no longer shy about people seeing it.
Yeah.
I used to have to go hide. I didn't want my kids to see it
ALS is great for self-embarrassment. It pretty much takes it all off the table.
No question.
When Morrie said to me, you want to hold the beaker while I pee, I was pretty much sure that he had lost any sense of embarrassment. And he kind of, he found the humor in it,
Well, you find out who your friends are when it gets that level.
That's right. That's right. Who's going to hold your beaker? Yeah.
On last week's podcast, we had a debate at the end of the podcast, as to whether we wanted to share any of my dark humor moments. And we decided that probably wasn't a good idea because they're pretty dark, but it might sort of trigger some people who have had other bad things happen, and maybe they don't find it so, humorous or whatever.
Yeah.
But I would have liked to have met Morrie because I think there might be a few things we have in common.
He had, I don't know if it was dark humor. He wasn't a dark person. There wasn't really a dark side to him at all. There wasn't a hidden, this is when he was healthy, there wasn't a hidden agenda with him. There wasn't quiet resentment or jealousy. He pretty much lived on the surface. If he felt like crying, he cried. This is when he was fine. He was perfectly healthy. If he felt like laughing, he laughed. He
kept it real.
He kind of was who he was. But he, like when I said to him, so Lou Gehrig's disease, Lou Gehrig, today I feel like the luckiest man on the face of earth. And he said, yeah, I didn't say that. And he had his moments like that. And so, yeah, find the humor. I mean, humor's an individual thing. If it makes you laugh, that's all that matters.
Yeah, well, that's total agreement on that one.
Yeah. So that one of the questions I was going to ask, I think you covered it, which is like, how do you make peace with that loss of physical dignity? And it seems like humor is one of the key ways that Morrie was able to do that, and Pete is able to do that as well.
Well, it's more, yes, that's one. I can tell you, and again, I'm speaking as a relatively healthy person, so it's always different than when you're going through it. And Pete can probably answer this better. But in terms of observing Morrie, another thing that he did was embrace the dependency. He said, inside everybody is the child that they once were. And he said, when I am held, the way that he put it was, when you come into this world as a baby, you need to be held, comforted, and caressed, right? That's what every baby wants. That's how you get them to stop crying. Held, comforted, caressed, right? He said, well, I let you in on a secret. When you're leaving the world, you need to be held and comforted and caressed. He said, and that doesn't surprise me. He said, there's a symmetry to that. Yeah. He said, what surprises me is in between the coming and the going, we act like we don't need to be held or comforted.
Invincibility. Yeah.
Correct. And so you embrace that dependency. You let, someone has to wipe your ass. You say thank you, and it's a nice sensation, and what, instead of like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. This is terrible. It's terrible. So I think that's also one way, again, giving up the pretenses of, well, this is what makes a man. A man gets up and walks and wipes his own ass. Well, no, it isn't. That's not what makes a man. An ape can do that. Mm-hmm. What makes a man is his heart and his emotion, and that you don't lose that. And that is, and I've seen it. Like I tell you, I mean, I can't tell you how many people with ALS I've met, and it's such a broad spectrum. But the one thing that for everybody who takes a positive view, and I can tell already, Pete, you've got that in you, a positive view of the negative. They find a way right up to the very end, and I hope your very end isn't for another 30 years. You wouldn't be the first. I mean, they are making strides.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff going on with ALS now that's pushing the envelope. But right up to the end, people found a way, even if they lost their voice, even if they, like Morrie got to talk to the end. That was great for him, because for a guy like him, he has to talk. Augie lost his voice early on in the process, so he had to blink. But he was an analytical guy. He was a problem solver, and he figured out this blinking with his toe, and he could type with his toe, as fast as I can type with my fingers.
Incredible.
And so he was able to continue to express himself, and that is the one thing that we must say about ALS: your brain is intact. Think of dementia, Alzheimer's, other ways that people stroke that go out, and you can no longer, you're not cognizant. And in many ways, to me, that's worse. You're here, you might live longer, but you can't thought process, you can't appreciate, even if you can't speak or it's difficult to type, if someone comes in and tells you that they love you, you will get an expression that tells them you love them back. That's a gift. Right up to our death, because many people who died don't get that. My mother and father both died of complications of strokes. My mother lost the ability to talk 3.5 years before she actually died. And those were the worst 3.5 years that we had with her, because I had no idea if she could understand me. Yeah. There was nothing to it. Morrie, had 2 years in which he was a terrible disease also, died also, but he was right up to the end able to show and appreciate what was being given to him and what he could give back. So in that way, ALS, it takes everything else, but it leaves, and it's kind of cruel irony, it leaves the thing you need the most.
Yeah.
Well, some of my closer friends, have asked me, do I have some lines in the sand of, things that will make my life, the quality of life no longer acceptable. And I've got a few. I live in Massachusetts. I'm 9 miles from MGH, which is where I've gotten all my ALS treatment, which is fantastic. There's no medical aid or medical assistance in dying law in this state. There's not a ton of options. You can stop eating and drinking is really the option. I'm curious how Morrie thought about having agency about dying and choosing.
We did talk about that. I didn't put it in the book because I felt that that is a really personal decision. Yeah. And I didn't want to influence anybody one way or the other by saying, well, Morrie did it or Morrie did it or whatever.
Right.
He understood it. That's how he said it. He said, I understand. I would never criticize anybody for doing it. He said, for me, I wouldn't want to do that. I think it would be hard on my family. And I know a guy who just went through that. I guess I should say knew a guy. But I used to date his daughter. We were for a couple of years. We were very, very close. And so I knew him. He was like my potential future father-in-law. Never liked me that much. So it's probably good that it didn't work out. But they traveled to Switzerland and, and went through the whole process. And, I heard them talk about it. I think they've mentally made peace with it, and even advocating for it. But I still sense underneath it all that it was traumatic for them to be there. And that was Morrie's reason for not doing it.
Lynn and I have talked quite a bit about it. I happen to be a Swiss citizen. So there's a couple of paths. There's Dignitas, but there's Exit is the other organization that's just for Swiss citizens.
But you have to do it when
you have to pick a date. Yeah,
you got to pick a date. It's very,
It's a little pressure on you to follow through on a specific date.
Yeah, you got to pick a date, and you have to be of full sound mind and body and able to communicate that.
Yeah. And self-administer the medication.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't know, but I'm not here to pass.
No, I mean it's more.
I'm only answering your question about Morrie. Morrie said, "I understand it. I understand it, and I don't have a negative opinion of it. But for him himself, family was so important, and loved ones were so important.
It's 100% individual choice, and there is no.
Well, you remember the moment in the book when he had that friend Morrie Stein who was losing his hearing. And Morrie, they said, what happens if you lose your voice and he loses his hearing? And he said, then we'll just sit there and hold each other's hand, and think our thoughts to one another. And if you have that kind of attitude, then why go any sooner than you need to,
Yeah.
Provided that the pain or the difficulty is not too much,
right.
Physical.
Right. And you can choose on a tracheostomy or not. That's
right. That's
a few decisions you can make. But
right. Yep. Hey, I'm keeping an eye on the time, and I know we got to wrap this up, Mitch. I guess one closing. Morrie had his famous sort of when you're in bed, you're dead. Those aphorisms, and Pete has some of its own. If you had to pick a lesson from Morrie that's become more true for you as you've aged, one that hits harder now than it did in 1997, is there one that jumps out?
Yeah, 100%. Giving is living. Simplest sentence in the world. And, I would observe that as time passed, some people would come visit Morrie on Tuesdays when I was there. He was becoming more and more famous, and he was getting closer and closer to the end. And people would come sometimes who were very nervous about talking to him. They didn't know him very well, and they would sit outside his office with almost like an attack plan. They'd have photos and they'd have jokes and they'd have all this stuff about him, just going to cheer him up. And then the door would open to his office and they would go in. and the door would close, and they'd come out, half hour later in tears. But they would be crying about like their love life, their divorce, their job, their thing, like therapy session. And they'd say, well, I went in to try to cheer him up. But after a few minutes, of telling him jokes or pictures, he started asking me questions. And so I started answering. Then I started really asking me questions. And he started asking me more and more questions. And I started opening. I went in to try to cheer him up, but I ended up being comforted by him, like a therapist. And so I went in one time and I said, I don't get it. You're the one who's dying. You hit the mother load of sympathy here. Why don't you take advantage of it? And he said, Mitch, why would I ever take from people like that? He said, taking just makes me feel like I'm dying. Giving makes me feel like I'm living. And I've never forgotten that. And I have observed that in what I call the second half of my life, post-Morrie. My first part was very selfish and very ambitious and very self-centered. And my second part has been kind of the polar opposite of that. And that aphorism is at the core of it. And I plan to write a book with that title about my journey, as well as other people who have kind of given up the chasing the success life. And just, I don't know if you guys know, but I run an orphanage in Haiti that I'm at every month. And I run all kinds of charities here in Detroit. And that the sensation of that giving is the sense of being alive. And that's why, as long as you can give to other people in some shape or form, your knowledge, your love, your wisdom, you are alive. And that one holds true to me more than all of them. And there were a lot of good ones.
Yeah.
Just, I have an aide who is with me 6 days a week, who is from Port-au-Prince.
Oh.
On temporary protected status, which I'm sure you know a lot about. And it's
know everything about it.
Difficult situation. I don't know if I'd be here without her. I mean,
is she there now?
She's here right now. She's pregnant. She's still with a baby.
Is she?
Come say hello with
the camera?
Yeah, sure.
Was she raised in Port-au-Prince?
She was raised in Port-au-Prince.
Come on, yeah.
Oh, he's. Hold on 1 second.
You gotta switch the audio.
Switch the audio from the headphones to. There we go.
All right.
Est-ce que vous entendez-moi?
Oui.
Comment est?
Moi, en forme, grâce à Dieu.
Moi, content pour rencontrer.
Moi
Oui.
aussi.
Moi, gagne un orphelinat à Port-au-Prince. Moi, visiter chaque mois depuis 16 ans qu'on y a. So,
à Port-au-Prince là?
Oui, à Port-au-Prince, dans Canapé Vert. Vous connaissez ça?
Oh, c'est très
Oui.
bien.
Oui, moi, gagne 66 timous. Là, et moi, gagne l'autre 20 moun aux États-Unis. Il y a à l'université qu'on y a. Les mois t'attendais que ou hestien, moi voulais parler avec vous et moi t'as remercié merci pour tout ce que vous faites pour Monsieur Pete. Moi connais c'est ça gain de fois c'est difficile moi connais que les apprécier en pile chaque jour. So merci pour ça. Merci pour ça.
Merci un pile.
Okay.
I think I understood the last part.
Yeah, basically, I sound like I'm speaking English even when I'm speaking Creole. That's what everybody tells me. So, okay, I got to run. I have a show that's starting without me.
Appreciate so much you taking the time with us, Mitch. Thanks.
My pleasure. Anytime, Pete. I'm here if you want to chat or you need anything or a little boost or got any questions or anything. Just holler. I'm here.
Thank you so much.
All right, anytime. Pleasure,
Thank
guys.
You.
Appreciate you.
See you soon.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Wow. Didn't expect him to be kicking out some Creole.
That was pretty badass.
Amazing.
Yeah. I think we did a pretty good job, Pete. I think our first celebrity guest was a success.
That was awesome. What a good guy.
Yeah.
I wanted to chime in. Well, you're certainly living because you gave us, more than two knuckleheads who you don't even know who we are, kind of thing, and you.
Yeah, very generous with his time, and yeah, we went deep. We kept it real. And man,
we got Woodley some airtime.
I know. I love that. So yeah, I mean, this has been great, Pete. So I'm going to be processing this for a little bit. I'm sure you will as well. But
Yeah,
I think that's a wrap. Yeah.
absolutely. We'll do it again next week.
Oh, absolutely.